Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're gonna get started. I'm Joanna Espinosa, family educator at Include NYC, and I will be your Zoom support for today. Today's topic is Insider's Guide to Support and Services in College. And this is one of our series of live stream presentations that are aired on the third Thursday of each month at noon, where we tackle unique topics with special guests. We will keep it under 60 minutes. We will use a chat box today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to chat with us, or you can also use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we will do our best to answer them. So before we start, a little bit about Include NYC, about Include NYC, apologies. For more than 3 decades, we have been helping young people with disabilities, their families, and professionals. We offer workshops, a helpline, and resources. For resources or to speak with an educator, please call the Include NYC helpline at 212-677-4660. And in Spanish, it's 212-677-4668. Or you can also fill out a help request form at our website, which is www.includenyc.org. I will also be putting this information in the chat. For most webinars or workshops, when you enter this room, your sound and video will be off. Please note, due to the number of attendees, our presenter may not be able to answer every question, but we will add information in the chat box for you to follow up with questions as needed. English subtitles are available for this session. Click the live transcripts in your Zoom webinar controls and then select Show Subtitle. We will be offering Spanish interpretation for today's presentation. To listen in Spanish, click Interpretation in your Zoom window and then the language you would like to hear. You can also select Manage Language Interpretation and have the option to mute original language. Now, I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Charmaine Townsell, CUNY University Director of Student Engagement and Inclusion at CUNY, and Leonard Blades, CUNY LEADS Plus Advisor for Queensborough Community College. And I will now pass it along to Neil, who will get us started. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Joanna. Before I get started, for Martin, our Spanish interpreter, would you like to give some instructions to the Spanish speakers in the audience of how they can get into that translation channel? All right, well, let's move on then.
Yes, Neil, I can also add the instructions in the chat in Spanish as well, if that helps.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great.
All right, so thank you for the wonderful introduction, and thank you to everyone in the audience for joining today's Include NYC Live. My name is Neil Purohit, and I'm a Youth in Transition Services Coordinator for Include NYC. It's an honor to be here this afternoon, and it's my sincere hope that everyone leaves this presentation with a deeper understanding of the supports and services available to young people with disabilities pursuing higher education. Before we start our panel, I would like to note that while some of the supports and services that we will be discussing here today are specific to the City University of New York system, support for students with disabilities exists at every college and university. To any student in the audience who isn't quite sure who to turn to for guidance, or to any parents or family members in the audience who want to see the young people that they love and care for receive more support in school, I would encourage you to reach out to Include NYC's helpline to schedule a time to speak with one of our expert educators about the supports and services that might be best to suit you or your loved one's needs. With that being said, I also wanted to highlight our resource packet for this afternoon. Everyone who registered for this event via Zoom should have received an email with a packet containing a series of links to all the programs that Charmaine, Leonard, and I will be talking about today. If you did not receive that packet, please let us know in the chat box, and Joanna will reshare the packet with you soon. Everyone should have also received a flyer for our upcoming College is Possible event. It's taking place next Tuesday and next Wednesday, and it's an opportunity for students with IEPs graduating with a diploma or a non-diploma credential to learn more about college and educational programs in New York. With that housekeeping out of the way, let's begin our panel. Before we get into the first question, Charmaine and Leonard, please go ahead and introduce yourselves and share your titles and anything else you'd like to share with us once more.
Thank you so much, Neil. Leonard, it's okay if I go?
You know me. I'm a
All
gentleman.
right,
By all
there you
means.
go.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I want to first start off by thanking Neil and Joanna and Include NYC for offering us an opportunity to speak with you today. I am so encouraged by events like this, especially in this virtual universe, and I'm really excited. I want you to consider us a resource, right, for all the great work that Include NYC does. I'm honored to be a collaborator. So thank you.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Leonard Blades. I serve as the CUNY LEADS Plus Advisor for the Services for Students with Disabilities Office at Queensborough Community College. And I also serve as the co-alumni advisor for the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, CCSD. And I too am happy to be a collaborator with wonderful individuals such as Neil and Joanna and everybody at Include NYC. So thank you for having me with you all today.
The pleasure is all ours. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Charmaine. So without further ado, let's begin with our panel for the afternoon. So our first question is this: who should students with disabilities be sure to connect with in their first few months at college when they're just starting out?
Thank you, Neil. I am the university, as Joanna shared earlier, I'm the University Director of Student Engagement and Inclusion. I also happen to hold the position of co-chair of the Council of Student Disability Issues. We call it COSD. There's a lot of acronyms at CUNY, right? So we call it COSD. It's all the directors from disability services all throughout the university that really work tirelessly on behalf of students with disabilities to ensure that you receive reasonable accommodations, that you get support with registering for your classes, right? And also other opportunities like scholarships, and we'll get a little bit into that later on in the presentation. But I definitely encourage you to find your disability service office, right, and register with them. You may never have to utilize a service with the Disability Service Office, but it's all, as our president of the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, Louis Jr. Alvarez says, it's always better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. I also encourage you to make sure that you have the most recent updated IEP available for you. All right. Unfortunately, so many of our students come to CUNY without an updated IEP and end up having to recur, for some of us, at a really expensive cost to the student or the student's family, right, in order to secure the documentation needed in order to get the support services. So I encourage you all to please make sure that right before you graduate, that you have an updated IEP, regardless to whether you plan on coming to college or not, because like we know, sometimes we change our minds. So those would be my recommendations. Leonard?
Thank you so much, Charmaine. And I too am gonna reiterate the importance of registering with your disabilities office at your campus. This is the office that is primarily designed to support our students with disabilities when it comes to ensuring that they receive their reasonable accommodations for their classes and for their exams. And again, it's better to have it, you know, and then to not have it later on when you find out, oh, I wish I did have it in place. So registering with your office is a really important step, and definitely something that I would recommend students do, you know, in the first few months of their college.
And I want
not
to
only
add to that, Leonard, right?
Well-
I think that it's extremely important because remember, you're coming into a new system.
Mhm.
These directors understand the system and understand how to best navigate the system in
Absolutely.
partnership with you, not for you. All right, I'm sorry, Leonard, go ahead.
No, that is important. That is important. And it reminds me of another important aspect, because high school and college are two different institutions. You know, in high school, you know, the institution, I keep saying that, but the high school is responsible for helping you to ensure that your your accommodations are set in place. When it comes to college, the student becomes the one who is responsible to ensure that their accommodations are set in place. You know, so it's definitely a level of independence and a level of self-advocacy that students learn, you know, when they enter college. So that right there, that first step, you know, registering with your office is the first step to establishing that. And not only that, I wanted to also mention CUNY LEADS. LEADS stands for Linking Employment, Academics, and Disability Services. And it's a great service that provides services in terms of helping our students with academic success and also helping to prepare them for career readiness. So another reason why you should register with your office, because as soon as you register, you are automatically a part of LEADS. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I do want to highlight a little bit of what was shared just now. I cannot overstate the importance of having that copy of your IEP, as Charmaine had mentioned, when you are leaving high school. Having those updated evaluations can, as Charmaine mentioned, save you thousands of dollars, and can also give you additional insight into what supports and services might work best for you, not just at the college level, but also in a future job or in a future training program. Would encourage everyone to explore Include NYC's event calendar, which can be found on our website, to see our upcoming transition workshops, such as our Turning 18 workshop, our Social Security, Rights, Benefits, and Planning workshop, but also our Introduction to Transition workshop that goes a little bit more in depth into the transition steps that can help young people strongly shift from high school to whatever comes next. So thank you for that response. It's sounding like there's a lot of different services and a lot of supports available in higher education, like the Campus Disability Services Office is the gateway to everything else that a university system has to offer. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes. Sorry, Neil, just want to take a pause. There is a question in the Q&A, and it's for Charmaine, which says, does a student need an updated IEP from the last year in high school with an updated evaluations? What if the reevaluation was done in their sophomore or junior year?
I think that's a really great question. I would recommend that you absolutely update it before they graduate, right? Do not rely on an updated IEP from 2 years ago, right? Especially now, while you will have the support and they pay for it, all right? So we want to ensure that they have the both, yeah, that's the facts, right? We want to make sure that the students have the most recent updated IEP, right? I mean, we've seen students who really struggle, right, when their IEPs are not updated. And then, I mean, we have resources where we help to facilitate students offsetting the cost of evaluations, but there's still a cost.
Well said, and thank you, Charmaine, for answering that. Can definitely echo this as well. The more updated an evaluation can be, the more likely it is to be useful and the longer that it will be useful for. So before we move to our next question, I did want to note to everyone in the audience today, as I see more and more folks entering our live stream, that almost all colleges and universities in the US have a disability service office, not just CUNY's. And they are really the places that can share additional info on what supports, what services exist, and what might work well for each individual student. So on that note, I'd like to transition into our next question. It sounds like there are a lot of supports and services available in CUNY and definitely in other university systems as well. So how can a student know in CUNY, what kind of supports, services, or programs are the right fit for them?
You know what? I think I'll start on this one. Are you okay with that, Charmaine? Awesome. So as I kind of spoke about a little bit, there's CUNY Leads. CUNY Leads is a great resource. When every student registers with their office, again, they become a part of CUNY Leads. One of the reasons why that's so important, because again, CUNY Leads, they can help you when it comes to looking for opportunities when that student is ready to seek employment, whether that opportunity may be in a job or maybe an internship. I can speak from personal experience that CUNY Leads has helped me when I was a student, when I attended Brooklyn College. I needed help with my resume. I needed to, update it. I needed to, well, first I just needed to have one in general. I didn't have one. So CUNY Leads helped me in terms of developing one. And I wanted to gain some experience, and I wanted to find opportunities that were of interest to me. And at the time it was, community outreach. So when I developed that resume, I started applying, and I'm happy to say that I actually landed my first internship with the help of CUNY Leads. I was a publicist, and I can tell you I learned quite a bit when it comes to outreach, when it comes to engaging with others, and just working and further developing my interpersonal skills, and just interacting with others. So CUNY Leads really helped me as a student, and I have no doubt that it is a great benefit to our other students as well. And also I want to mention there is CUNY LEADS Plus, the role in which I proudly serve. I serve in today at Queensborough Community College. CUNY LEADS Plus is everything that I've already mentioned about CUNY Leads. They help when it comes to the academic advisement, providing the career counseling, developing the resume, developing the cover letter, and helping you look for opportunities and jobs or internships or volunteering. But CUNY LEADS Plus is geared towards our neurodiverse population. Our students with learning disabilities, students who may be on the spectrum, just that population, and helping to provide them support in terms of, additional support, I should say, in terms of the assistance with transitioning to college. And we host workshops in areas such as study skills and time management and test anxiety and organizational skills, those areas where they may need that extra support. But obviously it depends on the student and it depends on their need. And those are some of the things that I have the pleasure in assisting our students at Queensborough with. Charmaine, would you like to add anything?
Well said, Leonard. All right. I definitely, again, want to emphasize that you connect with your disability service office, right? They will be able to help you navigate the campus, right? Navigate the entire CUNY system. But, one of the things that a lot of our students say is the best part of the college experience is their participation outside of the classroom. We call that experiential learning, right? Some of those tools that I have shared with Leonard and Neil as a proud alum of Queens College, we call the jewel of CUNY, right? Is that these skills that we learn, we utilize them later on in life. And I'm happy to say, I want to first give a shout out to Lenine, Arlene, Julia, Junior, all the folks that I see that are here with us today. They are all part of a university-wide organization called the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, CCSD, right? CCSD has been in existence since 1989. They are advocates that have built a community of support for both inside and outside the classroom. They connect with each other, they talk about accommodations, they talk about options, they talk about professors and opportunities for employment, right? But these students really do support them, to support each other, right? I'm proud to say that I, along with Leonard, who's a little bit younger than me, and we'll leave it at that, right, have had the opportunity to be able to celebrate and dance at the weddings of several of our student leaders, because they really do connect and support each other. Several of them have transitioned successfully to employment because they had a good GPA, but they had an amazing, right, co-curricular transcript where they did stuff outside the classroom. And we talk about it all the time, right? You can have a 3.8, 3.7 GPA, but when you are an employer, whether private or public, and you're looking for someone, right? You're looking for someone that will really contribute outside of the bare minimum, all right? And we understand that our students with disabilities, the skills that they got to navigate life alone will be useful for a potential employer. So this student organization, they have built community, they have friends for life, they have helped advocate for cutting edge university policy that impacts all over 11,000 students with disabilities throughout the university. We are so proud of them. They've made legislative efforts where our students with disabilities were able to secure $2.5 million to go towards disability services for the great state of for the great state of New York. So I definitely want to applaud them, right? And there's no sympathy, there's no pity for our students with disabilities. We encourage them to be proud advocates, right? And to utilize their skills. We also have participated in travel opportunities for our disabled students. For example, I had the honor of collaborating with colleagues to offer an opportunity for our students. We traveled to Austria, Germany. Leonard, who is a wheelchair user, also traveled with us along with a lot of other students with disabilities, right? Students who are neurodiverse, students who had visible and invisible disabilities. We traveled to Washington, DC, to Albany, like I said, to Austria, Germany, right? These are all opportunities that were available for students with disabilities who are engaged in their college community. Your priority is your academics. I just want to be clear about that. All right. Everybody loves a party. And like our vice chancellor says, ain't no party like a CCSD party, because the CCSD party don't stop, right? Right. Right. But Dr. Maybanks understands the importance of community, right? And that's the wonderful thing that CCSD does, is that they build community and support and focus on academics, and they help to build your resume. So I encourage you to get involved. Get involved in the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, or get involved in your student government. Get involved in your fraternity or sorority. I was the first Black student government president at Queens College, right? Woman with a disability. I was extremely involved. Shout out to Delta Phi Epsilon, right? But I'm telling you, it is possible, right? The sky is the limit. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charmaine, and for Leonard. I'm so glad to hear that there's not just this robust support with, support staff with offices at CUNY, but that there's also this strong kind of peer leadership component to it, that there are young people lifting each other and themselves up. So thank you so much for sharing this glimpse, and I look forward, maybe in the Q&A as well, to learning a little bit more about ways in which students have supported each other in this past year and a half that we've had. Now moving on to our next question. We've covered a lot of resources, very specific to students with disabilities, like CUNY LEADS, like the offices of accessibility on each campus. But given that we are all seasoned CUNY veterans here, what campus resources do you think that every student, independent of their ability status, should know about before they enter school?
I think that's a great question. I think that students with disabilities, particularly now as we are in distance learning in hopes to be able to transition back sooner than later, right? There are technology resources that are offered to students university-wide. There are mental health support services that are offered to all students that are paid through their student activity fees, right? There are, for example, because of the work of student leaders, right, we have fitness centers that have accessible equipment. Shout out to Queens College, right, where students can go and participate with their colleagues, right, to be able to work out. So there's programs for students who are academically and financially challenged. They're called ASAP, College Discovery at community colleges, and SEEK at senior colleges. And we also have resources for students who are food insecure, right, with our food pantries. So there's a ton of resources available at this great university. Leonard?
Thank you, Charmaine. Those are some really great resources that you mentioned. Definitely essential and of benefit, to our students here throughout CUNY. I would like to just, touch upon a little bit more about CCSD, the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, the representative organization that represents our more than 11,000 students with disabilities throughout CUNY, which is one of the ways I connected with Neil to begin with. And I'm really glad because CCSD, it has a way of just connecting you with some of the best people. Charmaine Townsell, of course, definitely being one of them. And of course, the wonderful students we have in the audience who are connected with CCSD today, as Charmaine mentioned, from Julia and to Arlene, and of course, Louis Jr. Alvarez and Lenine Jacob. It's been a great experience to be a part of CCSD. And for me to now serve today as the co-alumni advisor for the group. During this time of distance learning, when CUNY had to transition to everything being virtual, CCSD kept our students engaged. So much so that to date, CCSD has held over 250 virtual events with almost 10,000 participants. I'll say it again, 10,000. And I just want to say thank you to all of those participants for really staying engaged with us and connecting with us through a time that was not easy for any of us, but staying engaged and supporting one another. It was a beautiful thing to see and to be a part of. One of the things that I'd like to mention is an event that CCSD did to support our students when it came to their academics. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, throughout this past year, it may not have been so easy to get together in person as you normally would. Yep, no, not at all. Maybe getting together in the library or say, hey, let's meet up. I'll meet you at your home, or, we could get together and form a study group. That was not an option either. And I mentioned the home. We all know how it is that there may be a little bit of a distraction sometimes, at home. But yeah, yes, I know, Charmaine, I'm with you right there. But one of the things that CCSD did was held virtual study sessions. Now, the purpose of this was that, again, we wanted our students to feel that sense of togetherness through a really challenging time. So we created a virtual space via Zoom where students can log in, whether it was studying for a final, whether it was working on an assignment, working on a project, or if they just wanted to come in and read, just being in a space together, and that sense of you're not alone and that we're in this together was really, really essential to our students, as a lot of them day in and day out kept popping in, to our study sessions. We did it throughout the week, and it was just great to see all of them engaged. But as a matter of fact, it was taken a step further even after the virtual study sessions. And what I mean by that is, after plenty, and I mean plenty, of long days and nights and weekends of research, working on collecting, organizing, and branding a lot of different ideas and resources. Charmaine, you know what I'm talking about those long nights and weekends, because you were a part of them. Those same students did something with the purpose of students helping students. And what they did was that they ultimately created and branded the CCSD Distance Learning Toolkit. It was a new way for all of us to think about leadership and a new way for neurodiverse leaders to lead. We found that the driving forces behind the toolkit development were, of course, our neurodiverse student leaders throughout CCSD. It was indeed a true partnership. And I just want to take a moment to thank our students and the faculty and staff, you know, at Hostos Community College and the School of Professional Studies, the UDL project, and of course, my dear friend and colleague, Ms. Charmaine Townsell, for all of their support in making this happen. Thank you. And also, wait, I'm sorry, one last thing. It was, I also want to mention the learning centers and the tutoring centers at our CUNY campuses, because those are the centers that are specifically designed to support our students through the academics. And not to mention that our disability offices throughout CUNY, for example, at Queensborough Community College, offer remedial tutoring in areas such as English and in math, you know, to help our students become proficient in those subjects. Now I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonard. Thanks, Charmaine, as well. I love this story and this warming feeling that I'm feeling of students coming together in this time to support one another. And for everyone in the audience, I would also like to note that more information about mental health support at CUNY, about ASAP, Seek, College Discovery, about food accessibility resources within CUNY, and more information about tutoring centers and offices of accessibility are included in this packet that we sent out before the workshop, along with a little bit of information and a copy in English and Spanish of that distance learning toolkit that the students of CCSD put together. And I also, before we move to the next question, I want to strongly encourage any of those students who feel like they might be struggling academically to reach out to their school's tutoring office, learning center, or even their office of accessibility. The landscape of education has deeply changed recently in this past year and a half, and so many of the young people that I've personally worked with and that come through include have really struggled or experienced some difficulty getting back on track with their classes after a year and a half of remote learning. Given these changes that we've seen in education due to COVID, that topic, I also wanted to ask about recent initiatives within CUNY, what CUNY has done, not just this past year and a half, but in the last 2, 3, even 5 years as well. So what newer programs are there within CUNY to support students with disabilities? Leonard, please start us off.
Thank you, Neil. So one example would be Project REACH. REACH stands for Resources and Education on Autism. It is a CUNY initiative that was developed with the intent to better serve our growing population of college students with autism and to educate faculty and staff about how learning to work with students with autism. You know, students with autism are among the fastest growing population of college students. So CUNY definitely wanted to come up with an initiative to best support them in the best way possible. And of course, as I mentioned before, CUNY LEADS Plus, which is also a fairly new program here at CUNY, and it's offered at a campus in each of our 5 boroughs. Charmaine?
Thank you so much, Leonard. The wonderful thing about our proud disabled student leaders, right, is that they understand that they have multiple dimensions, right? We understand there's a word that we become familiar with. It's called intersectionality, but we understood the meaning of that word before the word existed, right? So it's important for us to recognize that there are so many different aspects of who we are as disabled New Yorkers, all right? So the one thing I would like to share, though, is the fact that there's a project called Universal Design, Learning and Leadership, UDL Squared, which is formerly known as the LD Project. It was created to address the needs of our neurodiverse student population that includes those disabilities for folks who have difficulty with reading, dyslexia, with writing, dysgraphia, with mathematical calculations, dyscalculia, right? And a whole bunch of others. And this year, we had the honor of partnering with New York City Summer Youth Employment and the City University of New York, CUNY. And as a result of this partnership, UDL Square is now a project at this university staffed by a majority of students, both with and without disabilities, right, who have successfully transitioned to employment. So these students are now employed at this university to work on issues that address the needs of students with disabilities, what we like to call students serving students. There's also the CUNY LGBTQI Plus Leadership Program and the CUNY LGBTQI Plus Advocacy Academy, where students receive a stipend and they're uniquely positioned to take their rightful place amongst the next generations of leaders in government, in industry, in art, in culture, institutions, science, and nonprofit. They focus explicitly on identity and leadership development through political advocacy, policy development, community organizing, and civic engagement. There's also the Black Male Initiative, what we like to refer to as BMI, right? BMI has a program for single fathers, right? Which we think is also extremely important at this university. We have support for our undocumented students, we now have staff members that are called Immigrant Student Success Liaisons, right? That we want to make sure our students know are there for them, to help advocate for them, particularly when it comes to scholarships and employment opportunities. So those are some of the newer initiatives that we have at this university that we are so proud of. But I definitely want to make one last comment for all our students out there, like who are fortunate enough to have a parent to advocate for them, right? I definitely want to thank the parents, because we understand that it is not easy, particularly when you're advocating for your child in a huge bureaucracy, right? But one of the things that I remember growing up is that both my mom and my dad told me, I need you to learn how to do X, Y, and Z, because one day I won't be here, right? Which was really difficult for me to hear and to quite understand and grasp, right? But I get it, right? I get it. We need to focus on educating our students to advocate on behalf of themselves. Of course, in partnership with their parents, right? But I think that it's important as parents are advocating for their child that they love dearly and want to see succeed beyond themselves, right? Talk to them about what you're doing. Talk to them about how you're helping them navigate the process, right? Because one of the things that we found is that when students come to college, they have an expectation that is going to be exactly like high school, and it is not. All right. So I encourage you, we love to partner with family members to support our students, but we are required to speak with the student. So it's important that while you can, at as early age as possible, right, start to introduce your child. And that may be difficult, all right? Because when you have all these other demands, when you have work, when you have personal issues, when you have other family issues, You're like, let me stop and explain this to Billy why I'm doing this, right? I get it. It's challenging, but I encourage you to do so that they have a better understanding and are a little more prepared when they come to college.
Lovely. Thank you, Charmaine, and thank you, Leonard. It's really delightful to hear how many new programs, new initiatives, and new pilots CUNY has to really make sure that students, all students, regardless of their identities, are supported. Now, before we begin our question and answer section, which we will get to in just a few minutes, in case anyone in the audience wants to start typing out their questions now, we wanted to close out our panel with a broader question. Given our years of experience in higher education as support people, as students, or as staff members, what advice, Charmaine and Leonard, would you give to any of the young people in the audience today who are listening along with their families and who might not be sure what's coming next for them?
Ladies first.
Okay. So thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Neil. I would say that there's an adjustment period, right? That you're going to need to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, all right? But there are tons of folks that are here to help you, but seek out the help. Don't wait until you're in crisis where things are just absolutely, you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait. And then you say, oh yeah, could you help me with this? We want you to reach out to us regardless, right? But it's always better to try to connect with us as early as possible, something that people with disabilities are all too familiar with, right? And that's the one thing I love. And I tell potential employers, it was like, you want a person with a disability to work for you because they have had to navigate the world. And they have, whether it's navigating Accessoride, navigating how long it's going to take them to get dressed, navigating social cues, right? My students with disabilities who are actively, I call them mine, but they're ours, right? Who are actively engaged, right? I know 98% of the time, never have an issue with them being on time. Actually, they're early. So I would encourage you to try to connect as soon as possible. And you may be nervous, but use this as an opportunity. Make friends. Join something outside the classroom so college won't be a miserable experience. All right? That's what I would advise.
Absolutely. Well said, Charmaine. For me, I would say again, seek accommodations as early as possible, because they are not retroactive. You know, I can't tell you, you know, we've had situations where, you know, students may want to have their accommodations set in place only to realize they didn't do it in time. So it's really, really important to seek those accommodations ahead of time, especially, you know, for your class or when you have an exam. So getting that stuff done ahead of time will be essential for you. And also, I would just like to reiterate the importance of getting involved on campus as it relates to your career readiness. Again, for me, because I took the time to be involved and to get engaged, because I made the decision to put myself out there to get engaged, it's benefited me greatly. And I'm happy that I am now in the position I am, again, at Queensborough Community College, serving as the CUNY LEADS Plus Advisor for the Disabilities Office. And again, still getting to be involved with CCSD as the alumni advisor. I've served on the executive board for CCSD for several years, and now it's just really it's gratifying to be able to give back, you know, to CCSD as an alumni advisor. And just being engaged, you get to make such wonderful, wonderful connections, which not just professionally, but also personally as well. I have made I've met such wonderful people, through my time in getting involved and being engaged. And again, Charmaine is no doubt one of them. And, with Lenine and with Luis Jr. Alvarez and, Luis Gutierrez and Julia and Arlene, I've met people that I know who are going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. And it's a blessing. So I definitely encourage all students, to put yourself out there, because you never know what you may get out of it. So I would definitely encourage that. Thank you.
And to our parents, Neil, can I just say to our parents out there, right? This is probably where the students glaze over, right? But to our parents out there, my dad always used to say to me, show me your company and I'll tell you who you are, right? Which means let me see the folks that you're associating yourself with, right? And that's what I'll think of you. I know hopefully he's in heaven listening, and he will be very proud that a lot of my relationships have come out from this great university. Not all, but a lot of them. And a lot of them have been advocates and colleagues and students who've advocated on behalf of folks with disabilities. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, Charmaine and Leonard. And I can definitely also echo this advice of getting involved. I discovered my love of working with people with disabilities in college, of building community, and I would not be where I am today without an opportunity to have given back to my fellow students when I was a young, impressionable junior just entering Queens College for the first time. Now, before we get into our Q&A, I do want to encourage folks to use that Q&A box, which is a feature on Zoom you should see on the bottom of your screen, so we can better track what questions are open and what we've answered. Before then, I do see a quick question in the chat. Someone is asking, do college students have to have IEPs or 504 plans? How does that work? That's a great question. So at the college level, IEP or a 504 plan doesn't strictly apply as a document. So the resources, the services that a young person would receive as listed on their IEP do not apply in college. But the evaluations that might also be included on that IEP and the suggestions for strategies that teachers can use to best share information with the young person can be very helpful at the college level, which is why we all advise that to have a copy of that document on hand earlier in our presentation. The first viewer question that's come in, and I think this is a great one for you, Leonard, is what is the process of applying for CUNY LEADS Plus?
That is indeed a great question. So CUNY LEADS Plus, just to go into it a little bit, CUNY LEADS Plus is a partnership with Access VR. Access VR is an agency that helps people with disabilities primarily when it comes to employment. And LEADS Plus, which I've mentioned, it stands for, well, the LEADS portion is linking employment, academics, and disability services. So the services that I provide as the LEADS Plus advisor, again, which include the assistance with transitioning to college, the academic advisement, the career counseling, the different workshops offered one-on-one or in groups pertaining to study skills or time management or test anxiety or organizational skills. The services are paid for by Access VR. So the first step would be to being sponsored by Access VR. And the way that works is, you fill out the application for Access VR. And once you fill that out, someone from Access VR will reach out to you to have an intake appointment to better get to know the participant, to understand what their needs are. And obviously, there's documentation that will need to be included and submitted in, to further determine your eligibility for Access VR. And then once you are sponsored with them, the counselor that you're assigned to can then approve Leads Plus services. Because again, it's a partnership, and Access VR pays for the services that Leads Plus offers. And again, the Leads Plus services, I don't necessarily do them all by myself. I'm the Leads Plus person. I'm the point person when it comes to it. But the services that I provide, it's a collaboration, which I'm grateful for, because we have a lot of great members at QCC, and obviously at all of our campuses that offer Leads Plus, that provide the supports needed to our students. So it's definitely a team effort when it comes to providing those services. But yeah, that is the process in which to get sponsored for Leads Plus.
Thank you, Leonard. I love the comprehensive answer to that question. And I'd also like to encourage anyone who's curious about Access VR, who wants to learn a little bit more about what the application process looks like, what documents are needed to apply, to look at our Access VR tip sheets, which can be found on our website. So thank you. The next question, which can go to either of you, is, do you have any suggestions as to how to encourage an introverted autistic student to put themselves out there? And I'd like to note, I'm reading the language of this question as it was typed in.
Yes, I would recommend that, again, your child or this student, right, registers in the Disability Service Office, right? But I also encourage them to get involved. The CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities that we keep talking about, right, is a university-wide student group that has chapters on several CUNY campuses throughout the university. But we have several students who are extremely shy with autism and all types of other disabilities that are brought to the table to connect and work together, right? CCSD was on the cutting edge of including our neurodiverse students in leadership opportunities years and years ago, right? So if you are that super shy student, right, we have someone like Luis Gutierrez, right, who is painfully shy, right, has an invisible disability, right, and he went on to lead the organization, get involved in his student government, and successfully transition, and now is the assistant director of disability services at Queensborough Community College. So it's okay to be shy, just as long as you know I'm gonna talk to you anyway, right? So I had Neil knows, right? I'm hunting Neil down in the neighborhood, looking at him on social media, right? Leonard knows that when I met Leonard, I was like, hey, you, cross the quad, come here, right? I was like, we need to get this student for CCSD, right? The university, and I joke, but the university and the staff can offer the opportunity, but you have to be willing to take it.
She's not kidding about the quad. She was like, hey, you, we need you. We need you. She wasn't kidding.
I admire your ability to stay in touch with folks, Charmaine, and to be proactive with that communication. And I also, admire this example. I'm delighted to hear how many supports there are for students who might not be that comfortable in social settings, for students who might be on the spectrum, not just with programs like Project Reach, but also in these student organizations like CCSD. Now, as folks—
we have Neil, and we have graduate students, right, with autism who are very engaged, right, at all levels. It is called the spectrum. So please let them know that we are there for them if they choose.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. As folks continue to type out their questions, and as we prepare to wrap up, we at Include did reach out to some of the young people that we work with some of our staff members to get a few questions as well. And there's a few that we'd like to ask until we start to run out of time. So a broad question, I think we could answer this very quickly. Do any of the programs that we've talked about today cost extra money beyond the tuition and fees that are regularly associated with college?
Leonard?
I'm sorry, could you say that? I didn't catch the last part. I think mine.
Yeah, so beyond the regular tuition and fees that are associated with higher education, do any of the programs that we discussed, any of these CUNY initiatives cost any extra money?
Oh, easy. No, none.
Wonderful.
Zip. No, these programs that we've talked about, such as the Project Reach or the CUNY LEADS Plus, CUNY LEADS, none of those programs are of cost to our students. They are 100% free.
And if you think about it, they've already paid for it as part of their tuition.
Part of their tuition.
Yeah.
None of the extra costs.
Yes, but no cost to join CCSD, no cost to access the food pantries, no cost to access the mental health services. Absolutely.
Thank you. I do see we have one more quick question in the chat. Someone's following up on their previous question saying, if IEPs do not have to be updated in the college environment, what kind of documentation, if any, should be updated? Wonderful question. So it's the evaluations that are on an IEP that can be the most useful and can be used as kind of proof of ability status when going to an office of accommodations to apply for those accommodations at college. So having private evaluations or just having separate evaluations are also ways that you can get those accommodations in college, and are documents that you should update while you are moving through a system like CUNY or like Access VR or even OPWDD.
Yes, before you graduate, right? But preferably right before, right? But I just want to add to what Neil said. Thank you for that, Neil. It was so eloquent. Remember, if you have missed that window, we're not going to slam the door in your face and say, figure it out, right? No. Our disability service directors will try their best to work with you. We want to remind you that the accommodation you may receive, we work in partnership. So the Disability Service Office works with you, you work with them. You don't necessarily need to know what accommodations you need, but it's helpful, but it's a partnership. You work together to figure that out. All right, so please don't hesitate to communicate that. And just remember, accommodations are not retroactive. For example, and for those of you who may not know what that means, for example, if you take a test and you say, oh man, I needed more time for that because of my disability, and you go to the Disability Service Office and say, hi, I would like accommodations for this test, they'll tell you we're very sorry. We do not give those accommodations after. So they are not retroactive, right? And also remember that they are there to help navigate, but you may not get the accommodation of your choice, but you will be accommodated.
Thank you, Charmaine. I'd also like to note before I hand it back to Joanna to wrap us up as we're approaching 1 o'clock, that Include NYC on our website, we do have a list of places that you can access free or low-cost evaluations. Again, if that financial aspect of getting reevaluated, getting this updated evaluations is a barrier. So thank you all so much for being with us today, and many, many thanks to Charmaine and to Leonard for being our guests from CUNY today.